The Seoul Intergalactic Research Facility stood like a giant metal mountain against the night sky. Its silver walls reached up toward the stars and bright lights shined from hundreds of windows. Inside those walls, scientists from Earth studied the most amazing creatures in the galaxy. But at this late hour, when most people were sleeping in their beds, only a few workers remained in the building. Do-hyun pushed his cleaning cart down the long white hallway of Section 3. The wheels made a soft squeaking sound that echoed off the walls. He had been working the night shift at this place for 8 years now. Every night from 10 in the evening until 6 in the morning, he cleaned the floors, emptied the trash cans, and made sure everything stayed neat and tidy. Most people thought his job was not important. They saw him as just a cleaner, someone who did the dirty work while the smart scientist did the real business. But Do-hyun felt proud of what he did. He knew that without people like him, this amazing place could not run properly. The scientists needed clean labs to do their work. The alien creatures needed clean homes to stay healthy, and someone had to take care of all the small things that made the big things possible. Do-hyun was 43 years old. His black hair was starting to show some gray, and his hands were rough from years of hard work. He was not a tall man, but he was strong and careful in everything he did. His wife Soha always said he had kind eyes. Those eyes noticed things that other people missed. As he moved through the facility, Do-hyun looked into each room and habitat. Behind thick glass walls lived creatures from planets far across the galaxy. There was a blue creature from Kepler that looked like a giant butterfly with 6 wings. It slept curled up in a corner of its warm, humid room. In another habitat lived 3 small beings from the Vega system. They had silver skin and big purple eyes. They were playing some kind of game with floating lights. Do-hyun always greeted each creature softly as he passed. He knew they probably could not understand his words, but he believed all living things deserved to be acknowledged. He had learned this from his grandmother, who used to talk to her plants and claimed they grew better because of it. "Good evening, little ones," he whispered to the Vega creatures. "Sleep well, beautiful friend," he said to the butterfly being. Some of the night scientists thought he was strange for talking to the aliens, but Do-hyun did not care what they thought. Tonight felt different somehow. There was something in the air, a feeling that something new was about to happen. As Do-hyun finished cleaning Section 3, he received a message on his work tablet. Dr. Mina, one of the head scientists, had left him a note. She wanted him to do extra cleaning in Section 7 tonight. A new specimen had arrived, and the area needed to be perfectly clean. Section 7 was in the deepest part of the facility. It was where they kept the most dangerous or unknown creatures. Do-hyun had only been there a few times before. The hallways were wider there and the walls were thicker. Everything felt more serious and important. He pushed his cart toward the elevator and rode it down 3 floors. The elevator was very quiet, but he could hear his own heartbeat. When the doors opened, he stepped into Section 7. The lights here were dimmer than in the other areas. Long shadows stretched across the floor. The air felt cooler too. Do-hyun walked slowly down the main hallway, checking the room numbers on his tablet. Most of the chambers were empty tonight. He passed by thick metal doors with small windows. Some had warning signs in red letters. Others had special symbols that meant the creatures inside were sleeping or dangerous. Finally, he reached Chamber 7 Delta. This was the room Dr. Mina had mentioned in her message. Do-hyun parked his cart against the wall and looked through the observation window. What he saw made him stop breathing for a moment. Inside the chamber was the largest creature he had ever seen in the facility. It was at least 4 meters tall, even though it was sitting down. Its body was covered in dark scales that seemed to change color in the light. Sometimes they looked black, sometimes they looked deep green or blue. Along its back and shoulders, strange markings glowed with a soft golden light. The creature had a long neck and a head that reminded Do-hyun of the dragons in old Korean stories his grandmother used to tell him. But this was real, not a story. Its eyes were the most striking thing about it. They were large and golden, like liquid gold that moved and swirled. And they were looking right at him. Most of the alien creatures in the facility either ignored the humans completely or seemed afraid of them. Some acted aggressive and angry, but this creature was different. When it looked at Do-hyun, he felt like it was really seeing him, not just looking at him but seeing into him, understanding him. The creature was sitting in the far corner of its chamber. Its breathing was slow and heavy, like it was very tired. Do-hyun could see that its golden markings were not as bright as they should be. Something about the way it held itself told him that this being was not feeling well. He looked around the chamber more carefully. There were machines that monitored the air and temperature. There were cameras in every corner. There were even devices that could analyze what the creature was thinking or feeling. But one thing was missing. There were no food containers anywhere in the room. Do-hyun checked his tablet again. The creature had arrived 2 days ago. If there was no food in the chamber, when had it last eaten? The thought made him feel worried and sad. He looked back at the creature. Those golden eyes were still watching him. For just a moment, Do-hyun thought he saw something in those eyes that he recognized. It was the same look he had seen in hungry children on the streets when he was young. It was the look of someone who was trying to be brave while suffering in silence. The creature made no sound, but somehow Do-hyun felt like it was asking him for help. Dr. Mina arrived at the facility every morning at 7 o'clock sharp. She was 35 years old and had been studying alien life forms for over 10 years. Her office was filled with books about creatures from different worlds, and her computer contained files on hundreds of species from across the galaxy. She was considered one of the best xenobiologists on Earth, but the creature in Chamber 7 Delta was giving her the biggest challenge of her career. She walked into the observation room with her morning coffee and looked through the thick glass window. The creature sat in the same position it had been in for the past 3 days. Its dark scales seemed duller today, and the golden markings along its back were not glowing as brightly as when it first arrived. Dr. Mina opened her tablet and began typing her daily report. She had designated the creature as specimen XK901, following the facility's naming system. According to the files from the rescue team that found it, the creature belonged to a species called the Vathis. They came from somewhere in the Andromeda sector, though the exact planet was still unknown. The story of how they found XK901 was almost unbelievable. A deep space patrol near Neptune had detected a small object drifting in the darkness. When they brought it aboard their ship, they discovered it was a damaged escape pod. Inside was this creature, unconscious and barely alive. The escape pod was unlike anything Earth scientists had ever seen. It was made from materials that seemed to bend light and space. The technology was so advanced that human engineers could not figure out how it worked. But the most amazing thing was that the pod had traveled an impossible distance. According to their measurements, it had come from outside the Milky Way galaxy. Dr. Mina turned to the second page of her report and continued writing. The creature was approximately 4 meters tall and weighed about 800 kilograms. Its body structure was unlike any known life form. The scales that covered its skin appeared to be living tissue, but they also contained mineral compounds that should not exist in biological matter. The most fascinating feature was its ability to change shape. When XK901 first woke up in the facility, it had briefly taken the form of a humanoid being with silver skin and large eyes. Then it had shifted into something that looked like a giant bird with crystal feathers. Finally, it had settled into its current dragon-like form and had not changed since. Dr. Mina believed the creature was choosing to stay in this shape for a reason, but she could not figure out what that reason might be. Her team had tried to communicate with it using every method they knew. They played different sounds and frequencies. They showed it pictures and symbols. They even tried using basic mathematical concepts. But XK901 showed no response to any of their attempts. The biggest problem was food. Dr. Mina and her team had been trying to feed the creature for 3 days, but nothing worked. They had started with the standard nutritional compounds that worked for most alien species. These were carefully balanced mixtures of proteins, vitamins, and minerals that could keep almost any known life form healthy. XK901 had sniffed the first meal they offered, but then turned away without eating. Dr. Mina thought maybe the creature needed something more specific to its species. She ordered her team to create different combinations based on what they knew about other shape-shifting aliens. Dr. Jinho, her assistant, had worked all night mixing different compounds. He created meals with higher protein content, thinking that a creature of XK901 size might need more energy. He made others with rare minerals that some advanced species required. He even tried adding synthetic compounds that were supposed to help with cellular regeneration. But every meal was rejected. The creature would approach the food container, examine what was inside, and then retreat to its corner without eating anything. Dr. Yuna, the team's biochemist, suggested that maybe XK901 needed living food. Some predatory aliens could only eat fresh prey, They set up a feeding trial with small laboratory animals, but the creature showed no interest in them at all. If anything, it seemed disturbed by their presence. By the second day, Dr. Mina was becoming seriously worried. She could see that the creature was getting weaker. Its movements were slower, and it spent most of its time sitting or lying down. The golden markings on its scales were fading, like lights running out of power. She called a meeting with the facility's top experts. Dr. Kyung from the physics department thought the creature might need energy in a form that humans did not understand. Perhaps it fed on radiation or electromagnetic fields. Dr. Sano from the chemistry lab suggested that XK901 might process nutrients in a completely different way, maybe absorbing them through its skin instead of eating. They tried everything. They flooded the chamber with different types of radiation. They filled the air with various chemical compounds. They played electromagnetic frequencies that ranged from radio waves to gamma rays. Nothing worked. On the third morning, Dr. Mina noticed that XK901 was breathing differently. Its chest rose and fell in an irregular pattern that reminded her of the way very sick animals breathed. The golden markings were now barely visible, appearing as faint outlines on the dark scales. She realized they were running out of time. If they could not figure out how to feed this creature soon, it would die in their care. The thought made her feel sick to her stomach. Here was possibly the only member of its species that humans had ever encountered, and they might lose it because they could not solve a basic problem like nutrition. Dr. Mina stood at the observation window, watching XK901 struggle with each breath. She had studied hundreds of alien species, written dozens of research papers, and earned respect from scientists around the world. But all her knowledge and experience felt useless now. The creature's golden eyes looked up at her through the glass. For a moment, Dr. Mina felt like it was trying to tell her something important, but she could not understand what it might be. It was 2:30 in the morning when Do-hyun took his meal break. He had finished cleaning the main laboratories and the administrative offices. His cart was parked in the storage room, and he had washed his hands thoroughly before opening his lunchbox. Do-hyun always ate his meals in different places around the facility. Sometimes he sat in the small break room near the kitchen. Other times he found a quiet spot in one of the empty conference rooms. Tonight he decided to eat outside chamber. Sevs Delta. He could not stop thinking about the creature inside. Pulled a plastic chair from a nearby office and positioned it where he could see through the observation window. The creature was still sitting in the same corner, but its head was turned toward the glass. Those golden eyes watched him with what seemed like curiosity. Do-hyun opened his metal lunchbox and smiled. His wife Soha always packed his meals with such care. She had been doing it for the 8 years he had worked at this facility, and she never forgot a single night. Even when she was tired from her own job at the textile factory, she always made sure he had good food to eat. Tonight's meal was one of his favorites. There was a container of steamed white rice, still warm because Soha had wrapped the container in a thick towel. Next to it was a small portion of kimchi that she had made herself using her mother's old recipe. The red pepper flakes gave it just the right amount of heat, and the fermented cabbage was crispy and fresh. The main dish was grilled mackerel. Soha had cooked it perfectly, with the skin crispy and golden brown. The meat inside was tender and flaky, seasoned with salt and a touch of garlic. She had also included a small container of soybean paste soup and a thermos of green tea that was still hot. As Do-hyun arranged his meal on a small table he had brought from the office, he noticed that the creature had moved closer to the glass wall. It was now sitting directly across from him, separated only by the thick, transparent barrier. Its nostrils were moving slightly as if it was trying to smell something. Do-hyun began eating his rice and kimchi, but he found it hard to concentrate on his food. The creature's eyes never left him. There was something about the way it watched him that reminded him of his childhood. When Do-hyun was young, his family had been very poor. There were many nights when there was not enough food for everyone. He remembered the feeling of watching other people eat, while his own stomach was empty. That look in the creature's eyes was the same look he had seen in his own reflection during those hungry nights long ago. The more Do-hyun thought about it, the more concerned he became. He had read the basic information about XK901 on his work tablet. The creature had been in the facility for 3 days, and the research team was having trouble getting it to eat. 3 days without food was a long time for any living being, Do-hyun looked at his meal, then at the creature, then back at his meal. He made a decision that went against every rule and regulation he had been taught during his training. He was not supposed to interact with any of the specimens. He was not supposed to enter the restricted chambers or touch any of the scientific equipment. But sometimes rules had to be broken for the right reasons. He stood up and walked to the control panel next to the chamber door. All the cleaning staff had been given basic training on the facility systems in case of emergencies. Do-hyun knew how to operate the feeding port that was designed for introducing food and test materials into the chambers. The feeding port was a small compartment built into the wall. Scientists could place items inside it, seal the inner door, and then open the outer door to deliver things safely into the chamber. It was normally used for experimental food compounds and research materials. Do-hyun opened the inner door of the feeding port and looked at his remaining food. He had eaten about half of his rice and a few pieces of kimchi. There was still plenty left. He carefully placed the container of rice inside the port, along with the remaining kimchi and a piece of the grilled mackerel. He also poured some of his green tea into a small bowl that he found in a nearby supply cabinet. The creature had been watching his every movement. As soon as Do-hyun sealed the inner door and opened the outer door, XK901 stood up with more energy than it had shown in days. It moved across the chamber with surprising grace for such a large being. The creature approached the feeding port carefully. It lowered its head and sniffed the food that Do-hyun had provided. For a long moment it simply stood there as if it could not believe what it was seeing. Then very gently it began to eat. Do-hyun watched in amazement as the creature consumed the simple meal. It ate the rice first, one small portion at a time, as if it was savoring every grain. Then it tried the kimchi. The spicy fermented cabbage seemed to surprise it at first, but then it ate more with what looked like pleasure. When XK901 tried the grilled mackerel, something incredible happened. The golden markings along its back began to glow brighter. The light started as a faint shimmer and gradually increased until the creature's entire body was decorated with beautiful glowing patterns. The creature finished the food and then drank the green tea. As it did, it made a sound that Do-hyun had never heard before. It was deep and musical, like the sound of distant thunder mixed with singing. The sound seemed to come from somewhere deep inside the creature's chest, and it filled the entire chamber with harmonious vibrations. Do-hyun realized that the sound was a form of communication. The creature was trying to tell him something. And somehow, even though he could not understand the words, he knew exactly what it meant. The creature was saying thank you. XK901 moved closer to the glass wall and placed one of its large hands against the surface. Do-hyun stepped forward and placed his own hand on the glass, directly opposite the creature's. For a moment they stood like that, two very different beings connected by a simple act of sharing food. Do-hyun spoke softly through the intercom system that allowed communication into the chamber. "I will bring you more food tomorrow," he promised. "You do not have to be hungry anymore." The creature tilted its head as if it understood his words. The golden markings continued to glow, brighter now than they had been since it arrived at the facility. Dr. Mina arrived at the facility that morning expecting to find XK901 in the same weak condition as the day before. She had barely slept, worried that the creature might not survive another day without proper nutrition. Her team had worked late into the night preparing new food compounds, but she held little hope that they would succeed where all previous attempts had failed. When she walked into the observation room outside Chamber 7 Delta, she stopped in complete surprise. The creature was standing upright, moving around its enclosure with energy she had not seen since its arrival. The golden markings along its scales were glowing brightly, creating beautiful patterns of light that shifted and danced across its dark skin. Dr. Mina quickly checked the monitoring systems. All of XK901's vital signs showed dramatic improvement. Its heart rate was steady and strong. Its brain activity had increased significantly. Even its body temperature had risen to what appeared to be normal levels for its species. "This is impossible," she whispered to herself. She pulled up the overnight monitoring reports on her tablet. According to the automated systems, the creature had been inactive until approximately 2:30 in the morning. Then something had changed. The sensors showed a sudden spike in all biological functions around that time. Dr. Mina scrolled through more data and found something that made her heart race with excitement. The chemical sensors in the chamber had detected organic compounds that were not part of any experimental feeding program. The computer had identified traces of cooked fish, fermented vegetables, and steamed rice. Someone had fed the creature real food. She immediately accessed the security camera recordings for the previous night. The facility kept detailed video records of all areas, especially the high-security chambers. Dr. Mina fast-forwarded through hours of footage until she reached the time stamp that matched the sensor readings. What she saw on the screen made her gasp out loud. There was Do-hyun, the night shift janitor, sitting outside the chamber eating his dinner. The camera clearly showed him accessing the feeding port and placing his own meal inside the chamber. It recorded XK901's response to the food, the brightening of its markings and the harmonic sound it made after eating. Dr. Mina felt a mixture of emotions she could not quite sort out. Part of her was angry that a facility employee had violated so many safety protocols. Unauthorized contact with alien specimens was one of the most serious offenses in the research center's rules. It could result in immediate termination and even criminal charges. But another part of her was amazed and grateful. This janitor, with no scientific training and no understanding of xenobiology, had accomplished what her entire team of experts could not. He had saved XK901's life with a simple act of sharing his lunch. Dr. Mina called an emergency meeting with the facility's security chief and administrative director. She knew she had to report what had happened, but she also hoped to find a way to protect Do-hyun from the most severe consequences. The meeting did not go well. Security Chief Jun-woo was furious when he saw the security footage. "This is exactly the kind of incident we train people to prevent," he said, his face red with anger. What if the creature had been dangerous? What if it had tried to escape when the feeding port was opened? This janitor could have put the entire facility at risk. Administrative Director Sunmi was equally upset, but for different reasons. "Do you realize what kind of paperwork nightmare this creates?" she asked. "We have to report this incident to the Galactic Research Council. They will want to know how our security procedures failed. Our facility's reputation could be seriously damaged." Dr. Mina tried to explain the positive results. "But look at the creature's condition," she argued. "It's healthier now than it has been since arrival. Whatever Do-hyun did, it worked. We should be studying this success, not punishing it." Her words fell on deaf ears. By 10 o'clock that morning, Do-hyun had been called into the administrative office. Dr. Mina was not allowed to attend the meeting, but she heard later what had happened. Do-hyun was suspended immediately pending a full investigation. He would not be allowed back in the facility until the inquiry was complete. Depending on the final report, he could face permanent termination and possible legal action for violating containment protocols. The worst part was that Do-hyun accepted the punishment without complaint. According to Sunmi, he simply nodded when they explained the consequences of his actions. He said he understood that he had broken the rules and he was sorry for causing problems. But when they asked if he regretted feeding the creature, he said no. While the administrators dealt with the disciplinary issues, Dr. Mina focused on the scientific implications of what had happened. She ordered her team to analyze every component of the food that Do-hyun had shared with XK901. Dr. Jinho ran detailed chemical analyses on samples of rice, kimchi, and grilled mackerel identical to what appeared in the security footage. Dr. Yuna studied the nutritional profiles and compared them to the synthetic compounds they had been offering the creature. The results were enlightening and embarrassing. At the same time, the synthetic food compounds that the research team had created contained all the basic nutrients that most alien species required. They had the right amounts of protein, carbohydrates, vitamins, and minerals. From a scientific standpoint, they should have been perfectly adequate to sustain XK901, but they were missing something that the simple human food contained. The real food had complex organic molecules that only formed during natural cooking processes. It had trace elements from the earth where the rice had grown and the waters where the fish had lived. Most importantly, it had been prepared with care and intention, not manufactured in a laboratory. Dr. Yuna discovered that XK901's digestive system was designed to process these natural compounds. The creature's species had evolved to eat food that was grown, harvested, and prepared by living beings. The sterile, artificial nutrition that the research team provided was like trying to feed a human nothing but vitamin pills and protein powder. As the day progressed, Dr. Mina watched XK901 through the observation window. The creature was clearly looking for something. It kept moving to the area near the feeding port as if expecting another meal to appear. Its behavior became increasingly agitated as the hours passed without any sign of Do-hyun. By evening, XK901 had stopped eating the synthetic food compounds entirely. Its golden markings began to dim again, and its energy levels started to decrease. The creature seemed to understand that something had changed, that the person who had helped it was no longer coming. Dr. Mina realized they faced an impossible situation. They had finally discovered what XK901 needed to survive, but the person who had made that discovery was banned from the facility. The creature was once again refusing to eat and time was running out. Director Taiho was having his morning coffee when the emergency communication alert sounded in his office. The high-pitched beeping meant that an urgent message was coming through the facility's deep space communication array. These alerts were rare and usually meant important news from the Galactic Research Council, or one of the other major space organizations. Taiho was 58 years old and had been running the Seoul Intergalactic Research Facility for 12 years. He had seen many strange and wonderful things during his time as director, but he had never received an emergency communication that was marked with the highest level of cosmic importance. The message was encrypted with security codes that took nearly an hour to decode. When the translation finally appeared on his computer screen, Taiho had to read it 3 times before he could believe what it said. The message came from the Galactic Preservation Council, an organization that monitored the safety and survival of intelligent species throughout the known universe. They were responsible for keeping track of endangered civilizations and preventing the complete extinction of sentient life forms. According to their message, something terrible had happened in the Andromeda sector of space, the Vaethys homeworld, along with 17 other planets in their solar system, had been completely destroyed by what scientists called a reality fracture. This was an extremely rare cosmic event where the basic structure of space and time became unstable. When a reality fracture occurred, everything within its reach simply stopped existing. It was not like an explosion or a collision. The planets, stars, and everything else in the affected area were erased from reality, as if they had never been there at all. The Galactic Preservation Council had been monitoring the Vaethys civilization for thousands of years. They were one of the oldest intelligent species in the known universe, with a history that stretched back over 50 million years. The Vaethys had evolved far beyond most other life forms. They could change their physical shape at will, live for incredibly long periods of time, and had developed technology that seemed like magic to younger species. More importantly, the Vaethys had served as guardians and protectors for countless other civilizations. They had prevented wars between planets, stopped cosmic disasters, and helped younger species develop safely. Their knowledge and wisdom had been invaluable to the galaxy as a whole. Now they were gone. All of them. Every single member of their species had been on their homeworld or the surrounding planets when the reality fracture occurred. The Council estimated that over 10 billion Vaethys had been lost in an instant, except for one. The escape pod that had been found near Neptune contained the only surviving member of the Vaethys species. XK901 was not just a rare alien specimen. It was the last living representative of one of the galaxy's most ancient and important civilizations. Taiho immediately called an emergency meeting with all the facility's department heads. Dr. Mina, Security Chief Junwoo, Administrative Director Sunmi, and the other senior staff gathered in the main conference room. The weight of what Taiho had to tell them was almost too much to bear. "We are not just caring for an alien creature," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "We are responsible for the survival of an entire species. If XK901 dies in our care, the Vaethys will be extinct forever." The room was completely silent for several minutes. Everyone understood the magnitude of what they had just learned. The facility had housed many important specimens over the years, but nothing compared to this responsibility. Dr. Mina spoke first. "This changes everything," she said. "We cannot treat this as a normal research project anymore. We have to focus entirely on keeping XK901 alive and healthy." "What about the feeding problem?" asked Dr. Junwoo. "You said the creature stopped eating again after the janitor was suspended." Dr. Mina had been dreading this question, but she knew she had to address it honestly. "XK901 has not eaten anything since yesterday morning. It seems to be waiting for Do-hyun to return. I think the creature formed some kind of emotional connection with him," Administrative Director Sunmi shook her head. We cannot ignore security protocols just because of one incident. If we allow unauthorized personnel to interact with specimens, we set a dangerous precedent. But if we do not find a solution soon, XK901 will die, Dr. Mina replied. And when it does, we will have failed in the most important mission this facility has ever had. The debate continued for hours. Some staff members argued that they should find a way to bring Do-hyun back, despite the security violations. Others insisted that proper protocols had to be maintained, even in extreme circumstances. A few suggested that they should try to recreate what Do-hyun had done, with trained personnel following safety procedures. During the meeting, Taeho received another message from the Galactic Preservation Council. A team of their best experts was already traveling toward Earth. They would arrive in 3 days to assess XK901's condition and determine the best course of action for preserving the Vathis legacy. The pressure was enormous. If the Council's team arrived and found that XK901 had died or was in poor condition, the consequences would be severe. Earth's membership in the Galactic Research Alliance could be revoked. The facility could be shut down permanently. Worse yet, the galaxy would lose its last connection to one of its most important civilizations. After the meeting, Dr. Mina returned to Chamber 7 Delta to check on XK901. The creature was lying in the corner, barely moving. Its breathing was shallow and labored. The golden markings that had been so bright after eating Do-hyun's food were now almost completely dark. Dr. Mina tried one more time to offer the creature synthetic food compounds. She used the feeding port to deliver the most advanced nutritional supplements available. XK901 barely glanced at the offering before turning away. That evening, Dr. Mina stayed late at the facility, watching XK901 through the observation window. She found herself thinking about the incredible history that was contained within that dying creature. 50 million years of evolution, knowledge, and wisdom. Countless acts of heroism and protection that had helped shape the galaxy. Technologies and philosophies that could benefit all of spacefaring civilization. All of it was fading away because they could not solve a simple problem. As she sat there, Dr. Mina remembered something her grandmother had told her when she was a child. Sometimes the biggest problems have the smallest solutions, the old woman had said. Do not always look for complicated answers. Often the simplest approach is the right one. Dr. Mina thought about Do-hyun and his simple act of sharing his lunch. There had been no scientific analysis, no careful planning, no complex procedures. Just one person recognizing that another being was hungry and deciding to share what he had. Maybe her grandmother had been right. Maybe the solution they needed was not complicated at all. Dr. Mina made a decision that would either save her career or destroy it. She was going to recommend that the facility bring Do-hyun back, regardless of the security concerns. XK901 was too important to lose. And if a simple janitor was the key to keeping it alive, then that was what they would have to do. The last member of an ancient species was dying, and only one person seemed to know how to save it. Dr. Mina knocked on Director Taeho's office door early the next morning. She had not slept well, knowing that XK901's condition was getting worse with each passing hour. She also knew that what she was about to propose would be one of the most difficult decisions the facility had ever faced. Come in, Taeho called from behind his desk. He looked tired too. The weight of responsibility for the last surviving Vathis was clearly affecting everyone involved. Dr. Mina sat down across from the director and took a deep breath. I need to recommend something that goes against every security protocol we have, she began. But I believe it is the only way to save XK901, she explained her reasoning carefully. The creature had shown remarkable improvement after eating food prepared by Do-hyun. It had refused all other nutrition since then. Time was running out before the Galactic Preservation Council arrived, and they could not afford to lose the last member of an ancient species because of bureaucratic rules. Taeho listened without interrupting. When Dr. Mina finished speaking, he was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. If I authorize this and something goes wrong, my career will be over. If I do not authorize it and XK901 dies, my career will be over anyway. At least this way we have a chance of success. Within 2 hours, Do-hyun received a phone call at his small apartment. The voice on the other end was Dr. Mina, asking if he could come to the facility immediately. She could not explain everything over the phone. but she said it was a matter of life and death. Do-hyun arrived at the facility just before noon. He was led to a conference room where Dr. Mina, Director Taiho, and several other officials were waiting. They explained the situation as clearly as they could. The creature he had fed was the last of its kind. It was dying without proper nutrition, and for reasons they did not fully understand, it seemed to respond only to him. "We need your help," Dr. Mina said simply. "We know you broke the rules and there will still be consequences for that. But right now you are the only person who seems to be able to keep this creature alive." Do-hyun was overwhelmed by what he was hearing. He had thought he was just helping a hungry animal. He had never imagined that his simple act of sharing food could be so important. "What do you need me to do?" he asked. Dr. Mina led him to Chamber 7 Delta. When they arrived at the observation window, Do-hyun was shocked by what he saw. XK901 was lying on its side, breathing slowly and weakly. The golden markings on its scales were completely dark. It looked like it was dying. But as soon as Do-hyun appeared at the window, something incredible happened. The creature's head lifted and its golden eyes focused on him immediately. A faint glow began to appear along its back, as if his presence alone was bringing it back to life. "Amazing," Dr. Mina whispered. "It recognizes you." They had prepared a meal similar to what Do-hyun had shared before: rice, kimchi, grilled fish, and green tea. But this time, instead of just using the feeding port, Dr. Mina had convinced the safety committee to allow Do-hyun to enter the chamber directly, wearing protective equipment and accompanied by security personnel. The airlock to Chamber 7 Delta had never been opened with a living creature inside. The process took several minutes, with multiple safety checks and emergency protocols in place. Do-hyun wore a full environmental suit with its own air supply, and 2 security guards flanked him as he entered the chamber. XK901 had struggled to its feet when it saw the airlock opening. As Do-hyun stepped inside, the creature made the same harmonic sound that it had made before, but much weaker this time. It was clearly using most of its remaining energy just to greet him. Do-hyun approached slowly, carrying the prepared meal in a simple ceramic bowl. He knelt down a few meters away from the creature and placed the food on the floor. Then he did something that surprised everyone watching from the observation room. He began to speak. "Hello, friend," Do-hyun said softly. "I am sorry you have been hungry. I brought you some food. My wife made it special for you." XK901 moved closer, but instead of going directly to the food, it approached Do-hyun himself. The creature lowered its great head until it was level with Do-hyun's face. For a moment, they looked directly into each other's eyes. Then something happened that no one had expected. Do-hyun heard a voice in his mind. It was not his own thoughts. The voice was different, ancient and wise, speaking words that he somehow understood even though they were in no language he had ever heard. "Thank you for your kindness," the voice said. "I am called Buell in your language, which means star. That is fitting because my people were the guardians of the stars." Do-hyun nearly fell backward in surprise. He looked around at the observation window, wondering if anyone else had heard the voice. But the researchers outside showed no sign that anything unusual had happened. "You can hear me," Buell continued, the voice gentle and warm in Do-hyun's mind. "This is good. My people could speak mind to mind with those we trusted. You have shown me kindness when I was dying. That creates a bond between us." Do-hyun found his voice. "Are you really talking to me?" he whispered. "Yes," Buell replied. "And I must tell you something important. I am the last of my kind. My world is gone. My people are gone. But I carry within me the seeds of their future. If I can survive and grow strong again, I may be able to rebuild what was lost." The creature moved to the food that Do-hyun had brought and began to eat. With each bite, the golden markings on its scales grew brighter. But instead of just eating, Buell began to share its thoughts and memories with Do-hyun. Through their mental connection, Do-hyun saw images of the Vythus homeworld. He saw cities that stretched across continents, built from materials that seemed to be made of crystallized light. He witnessed advanced technology that could heal planets and repair damaged ecosystems. He experienced the profound sadness of watching everything disappear in the reality fracture. But he also felt something else: hope. "My people stored our genetic memories in special containers," Buell explained. "I carry them with me. If I can find the right conditions, the right support, I can use them to create new life. Not to replace what was lost, but to continue what was interrupted." As Buell finished eating, its strength returned visibly. The creature stood up to its full height, and the golden markings along its body blazed with beautiful light. It looked healthy and strong for the first time since arriving at the facility. Dr. Mina and the others watching from outside could hardly believe the transformation. In just 30 minutes, XK901 had gone from near death to apparent full health, and Do-hyun seemed to be communicating with it somehow, though they could not hear what was being said. "There is something else you must know," Buell said to Do-hyun. "Your people, the humans, have a role to play in what comes next. We Vathis were guardians of the galaxy for millions of years, but now that responsibility may pass to others. Your species is young but shows great potential for growth and wisdom." Do-hyun felt overwhelmed by the implications of what he was hearing. "I am just a janitor," he said. "I am not important enough for something like this." "Importance is not measured by job titles," Buell replied. "It is measured by the willingness to help others when they need it most. You fed a hungry stranger without asking for anything in return. That is the quality that true guardians possess." When Do-hyun finally left the chamber, he was changed forever. He had not only saved the life of an incredible being, but he had become the first human to truly communicate with a Vathis. The experience had opened his eyes to possibilities he had never imagined. Dr. Mina was waiting for him outside the airlock, eager to understand what had happened. But when she asked Do-hyun about his interaction with XK901, he found it difficult to explain. How could he tell them about the mental conversation? How could he make them understand the profound responsibilities that Buell had described? For now, he simply said that the creatures seemed to trust him, and that he believed it would continue to eat and recover as long as he was allowed to help care for it. What he did not tell them was that Buell had asked him to prepare for visitors who would be arriving soon, and that these visitors would determine the future of both their species. 3 days later, the sky above Seoul filled with ships unlike anything most humans had ever seen. The vessels of the Galactic Preservation Council moved through the atmosphere like liquid metal, changing shape as they flew. They landed in the open fields around the research facility with complete silence, as if they weighed nothing at all. Director Taiho stood at the main entrance to welcome the delegation. He had been told to expect 5 council members, but 12 beings emerged from the lead ship. They came from different worlds and looked completely different from each other. Some were tall and thin with silver skin. Others were short and broad with scales like reptiles. One appeared to be made entirely of crystalline, material that caught the light in rainbow patterns. The delegation was led by a being who introduced herself as Counselor Vera. She was humanoid in appearance, but clearly not from Earth. Her skin had a blue tint, and her eyes were larger than human eyes. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who had seen civilizations rise and fall across the galaxy. "We are here to assess the condition of the Vathis survivor," she said, without any greeting or small talk. "The Council has traveled far to ensure that proper procedures are followed for the preservation of this species." Dr. Mina led the delegation to Chamber 7 Delta. She had prepared detailed reports on everything that had happened since XK901's arrival. She was nervous about explaining the unconventional methods they had used to keep the creature alive, but she knew she had to be completely honest. When the delegation reached the observation window, they stopped in amazement. Buell was not just alive and healthy. The creature was thriving. Its scales shimmered with golden light and it moved with grace and energy. It was practicing what looked like a form of exercise or meditation, flowing through complex movements that were beautiful to watch. "This is unexpected," Counselor Vera said quietly. "We expected to find a dying specimen. Instead, we see a Vathis in excellent condition. How did you accomplish this?" Dr. Mina explained the entire story, starting with their failed attempts to feed Buell with synthetic compounds. She described Do-hyun's unauthorized action and the dramatic improvement that followed. She also mentioned the apparent communication that had developed between the janitor and the creature. The council members exchanged glances that Dr. Mina could not interpret. Finally, Counselor Vera spoke again. "We would like to meet this human who has formed a bond with the Vathis." Do-hyun was called to the observation room. He arrived still wearing his work uniform, nervous about meeting beings from across the galaxy. He had no idea how to act or what to say to such important visitors. Counselor Vera studied him carefully. "You are the one who saved the last Vathis?" "I just shared my lunch," Do-hyun replied simply. "Anyone would have done the same thing." The counselor made a sound that might have been laughter. In my experience, that is not true. Most beings think only of rules and procedures when faced with the unknown. You thought of compassion. That is rare. She turned to Dr. Mina. We would like to speak with the Vathis directly. Please arrange for us to enter the chamber. What happened next surprised everyone. When the council delegation entered the chamber, Buell greeted them in their own languages. The creature spoke to each member in words they could understand, using knowledge of their cultures and customs that should have been impossible. But when Counselor Vera asked about Buell's plans for the future, the creature did something unexpected. It insisted that Do-hyun join the conversation. This human has shown me the path forward, Buell said, its voice now audible to everyone through advanced translation devices the council had brought. He represents the qualities that make a species worthy of guardianship. I will not make decisions about my future without his involvement. The council members were clearly not prepared for this development. They had expected to take custody of the last Vathis and transport it to one of their research stations. The idea that the creature might refuse to leave Earth had not occurred to them. Buell explained its reasoning. The Vathis had always worked to guide younger species toward wisdom and responsibility. Humanity was at a crucial point in its development. They were beginning to explore the galaxy and interact with other civilizations. The choices they made in the coming years would determine whether they became a positive force in the universe or a destructive one. I can rebuild my species anywhere, Buell said, but I can only teach humans about guardianship here on their homeworld, working alongside them as they learn. The creature also revealed something that astonished everyone present. It had been studying human behavior through its connection with Do-hyun. In just a few days, it had learned more about human nature than most aliens discovered in years of formal research. Humans have the capacity for great kindness, Buell explained. But they also have the capacity for great harm. They need guidance to choose the right path. My people provided such guidance to dozens of civilizations over millions of years. Now it is time for me to do the same for humanity. Counselor Vera and her colleagues spent hours debating this proposal. Some argued that the last Vathis was too valuable to risk on an experimental teaching program. Others pointed out that the Council's mission was to preserve species, not to control them. Finally, Counselor Vera made a decision that would change the future of human civilization. The Vathis survivor has the right to choose its own path, she announced. If it wishes to remain on Earth and work with humans, the Council will support that decision. But there must be conditions. The conditions were extensive. Earth would have to establish a new department, dedicated to interspecies relations. The facility would need to be expanded and upgraded to meet galactic standards. Most importantly, a formal program would be created to train humans in the responsibilities of cosmic guardianship, and Do-hyun would be appointed as the first Director of Human-Alien Relations. The announcement left Do-hyun speechless. He tried to explain that he was not qualified for such an important position. He had no education in alien cultures or galactic politics. He was just a janitor who had shared his lunch with a hungry creature, but Buell supported the Council's decision completely. Education can be provided, the creature said. Wisdom can be learned, but compassion and the willingness to help others cannot be taught. You already possess the most important qualifications. Dr. Mina was appointed as the chief scientific advisor for the new program. Together, she and Do-hyun would work with Buell to develop training protocols for humans, who would eventually take on guardian roles throughout the galaxy. The transformation of the Seoul Intergalactic Research Facility began immediately. New buildings were constructed using advanced technology provided by the Galactic Preservation Council. The laboratory spaces were expanded to accommodate not just research, but education and cultural exchange. Buell began the process of genetic reconstruction that would eventually restore the Vathis species. But this was a slow process that would take many years to complete. In the meantime, the creature dedicated itself to teaching humans about their potential role as cosmic guardians. The first class of human guardian trainees arrived 6 months later. They came from all walks of life and all parts of Earth. Scientists, teachers, farmers, artists, and yes, even janitors. Buell had insisted that the program be open to anyone who demonstrated the right qualities, regardless of their background or education. Do-hyun often thought about how his life had changed from that simple moment when he decided to share his meal with a hungry stranger. He had gone from cleaning floors to helping shape humanity's future among the stars. But in many ways, his fundamental approach had not changed at all. Every day, he still looked for beings who needed help. He still believed that small acts of kindness could have enormous consequences. And he still carried a lunch that his wife Soha prepared with love, because he never knew when he might meet someone who was hungry. The last Vathis had not only survived. It had found a new purpose and a new family among the humans of Earth, and humanity had gained something even more valuable than an alien ally. They had gained a teacher who could help them become the guardians that the galaxy needed. In the years that followed, when people asked Do-hyun about the most important moment in human history, he would smile and say, "It was just lunch." Sometimes the smallest gestures change everything. And in the depths of space, where new civilizations were taking their first steps toward the stars, the legacy of both species continued to grow, one act of kindness at a time.